Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much indeed for joining this launch of a new partnership between Greater Manchester and the League Managers Association on the Shining a Light on Suicide campaign. Really pleased to be joined today by the Chief Executive of the League Managers Association, Richard Bevin, and I'll turn to Richard in a moment, but also by somebody who needs no introduction at all in Greater Manchester, somebody with strong connections to the blue and the red side, Mark Hughes. But we'll turn to Mark as well in due course. Just to set the scene, if I may, for a moment, I remember when the team at the Greater Manchester Health and Care Partnership came to me saying that they wanted to launch the Shining a Light on Suicide campaign. And if I'm honest, I flinched. I said, "Oh, does it have to be so direct?" And they said, "Well, that's the point. We don't talk about it, and we need to, because it's the biggest killer of men under 50 and of young women in the 20 to 34 age group. And we have to face up to it and have a new conversation about it. In Greater Manchester, it's estimated that 200 people die by suicide every year. And each one of those deaths has a profound impact on all of the people around them. We reckon it has a really devastating impact on 135 other people. So this is just it's a huge issue, and we need to have a different conversation about it, a more direct conversation, an open conversation. Since we launched the campaign, it has really begun to bring about the change that we wanted. We've had 35,000 visits to the website shiningalightонsuicide.org.uk. 25,000 people have taken part in the free online training provided by the Zero Suicide Alliance, which is amazing as well. Other things that we've achieved, but today we're going up a level, and we're bringing the campaign to a much wider audience, and that is down to this partnership with the League Managers Association. And I honestly can't thank Richard and his colleagues enough for taking this on and working with us on this. The truth of the matter is that football managers are experts in reading people, of understanding how they're feeling, lifting people. They're great communicators, and they've got so much to offer to this new national conversation that we need to have about suicide. And we are really grateful that they are prepared to engage managers across the game, current managers, former managers, in helping us get the message out there. So I'll just conclude by saying that, you know, as a football man myself, I'm so proud of the way the game often kind of leads change on wider societal issues. We saw that in the past on racism, and we're seeing it again on mental health, and today particularly directly addressing the issue of suicide. It's a brave decision by the League Managers Association to take this on, and it's the right decision. It's absolutely the right decision, because their members can get through to people in a way that lots of other people can't. And I would want to thank all of them for stepping forward to do that. I hope that this could be a game changer in the national conversation about one of our country's biggest killers. Let's hope so. We need to save more lives. We can save more lives, actually, simply by giving people more knowledge about the subject, empowering them with more knowledge, and the confidence to talk about it and have a direct conversation with somebody in the right way. We can save all of us more lives just by learning more, empowering ourselves with that knowledge, and that is what this campaign is seeking to do. So with that, I will pause there, and I will hand over to the Chief Executive of the League Managers Association, Richard Bevin. Richard.
Good morning. Thanks, Andy. Thank you for the opportunity for the LMA to support Shining a Light on Suicide campaign with you, and to raise suicide awareness and prevention within our society. We're very proud of this new partnership, and the campaign will hopefully help to change how people feel using the word suicide, to be more comfortable and confident as we start more open conversations. Current and former managers of the Greater Manchester clubs are taking part in a special social media campaign to support this first phase, and also to all the managers will have the opportunity to access the Shining a Light on Suicide 20-minute suicide prevention training course on the website. I understand that over 25,000 people from Greater Manchester have already completed the training programme, learned to save a life and bring the topic of suicide out of the dark, hopefully by empowering ourselves with such important knowledge. I completed the training course, and the last few words I think are really important on the course. See the problem, say the words, signpost to support. So thanks, Andy. And I'd like now to pass back to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much indeed, Richard. So the next speaker really needs no introduction at all in Greater Manchester. Much loved on the blue side and the red side, with a distinguished career for both of our clubs. I'll hand over now to Mark Hughes. Mark.
Hi guys. I'd just like to say how honoured I am to be part of this partnership. I think it's vitally important that we all encourage ourselves to understand the situation surrounding suicide and have those direct conversations that we feel help people who possibly might be thinking of taking their own life. I think it's important that we're able to have those direct conversations with them and allow them and encourage them to talk about it and understand that there's people there who want to listen. And I think it's really important that more of us have the tools to be able to understand and recognise the signs when they present themselves to us. And if we're able to recognise them, then maybe we'll be able to prevent suicide happening. And I think that's what we all must aim for. It's a difficult subject. It's not one that people will find easy, and some of the terminology sometimes will be wrong. But I think it's important that we all understand that we're here to listen and to help people who are suffering with feelings of suicide. And if those conversations can take place, then surely you'd like to think that we'd be able to prevent this devastating suicide happening. And more people who have the tools, and I think it's really important that everybody, if they can, looks at the website on shining a light on suicide and the Zero Suicide Alliance and get the training. It's very simple. It's only 20 minutes or so. I've done it myself. I've got my certificate here to prove that. So I think it's really important that everybody does it. It just gives you real insight into recognizing when people possibly are struggling with their mental health, and if we can recognize the signs early, then we can prevent tragedies happening.
Thanks so much, Mark, and thank you for taking part in the training course. 20 minutes, that's all it is, and I think everyone who does it will leave much more empowered, more confident, more knowledgeable, and we hope that many more people will follow your lead, Mark. And thanks again for being with us today. This is clearly the right time to launch this campaign, because obviously the last year has been dark and a difficult one for millions of people across the country. We're all struggling, or have been, one way or another, and we need to get better as a society at how we prioritise mental health, but particularly how we address this issue directly of suicide as one of, if not the biggest killer in our country. It's amazing in some ways that we don't address it more. You know, we talk about smoking or other things that obviously affect people's health, but we kind of skirt around this issue for the reasons that Richard and Mark have given, and that really it can't continue. And I very much believe that this campaign will change the conversation. It is a Greater Manchester campaign, but I think with the support of the League Managers Association, it will become a national conversation, and one that we all need to have. So thanks again to the League Managers Association for launching this partnership with us. I'm certainly of the view that there were easier campaigns that they could have taken on, but they've chosen to take this one on, and I would just say, full credit to them in doing so. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Ross, who's going to take us through your questions this afternoon. So Ross, over to you.
Thanks very much, Andy. And just to colleagues in the media, as per your joining instructions, you can submit questions through the Q&A bar. So I'll go to Jamie Gardner at Press Association. Question for Richard and Mark. We've seen instances of academy players suffering with their mental health and in some cases taking their own lives after being released from their clubs. How vital is it that managers and coaches use the right words when having those difficult conversations to let a player go? And is this something managers need more training on? We'll go to Richard on that one first, and then to Mark.
Yes, I think that's a really important question, and one that we've been discussing internally over the last few days. The LMA has an institute called the Institute of Leadership and High Performance, and we have about 900 coaches that go through there. So how we help with the education is going to be really, really important, as we hope this campaign will challenge the stigma and show people it's okay to talk when they're feeling anxious, stressed or down. I think also the prevention training, suicide prevention training, will also include a further 90-minute 3-hour suicide first aid light training to equip hopefully managers and coaches with the skills and knowledge to take part, and particularly for those managers that wish to become further ambassadors as well. And then it's going to be really important that we pass that information on to all the staff in the clubs and the academies, and encourage indeed all the staff to take the 20-minute online suicide prevention training. So I think it's about education and communication, repetition of message, and understanding those key goals that we spoke about earlier. See the problem, say the words, signpost to support.
Thanks, Richard. Mark, did you want to come in on that one?
Yes, I think it's really vitally important that young players and right through a football club get the support they need. A lot of clubs do have provision of player welfare and have actual departments that address that, but clearly the resources of all clubs aren't the same. So if people connected to a club that don't have those departments then maybe would have that preventative knowledge, then clearly, hopefully raising the profile as we're trying to do today, that will help people to seek out the knowledge that they need and do the training, and then recognize the signs when they're set before you. And if you can do that right across the board at all levels, from grassroots right up to the top level, then that will hopefully prevent people losing their life to suicide. And if we can do that, then that will be something fantastic. It's difficult in football clubs. There's a lot of emotions and disappointments, more disappointments than successes, if we're honest. And being able to recognise when somebody's struggling with those disappointments, when maybe they're losing their job, it's recognising those times when maybe the signs that they're giving are showing you that they're struggling to cope with decisions that will impact them, then that must help them, and must help the guys making the decisions as well. So the awareness is really important.
Thanks, Mark. Andy, did you want to come in on that one as well?
Only briefly, Ross, just to add that in many ways football is one of the most high pressure environments that there is, and I think managers taking this training probably will find that it's helpful to them in terms of how they do their job. And I think in doing so, though, because they're role models, it will get the message out that everybody who is a manager in whatever walk of life, so there's lots of people who manage people in all different walks of life, really it's their responsibility to take the training, because the way in which those managers have conversations with people in the workplace does affect what might happen afterwards and the mental health of the individual. So I just think this is why this is important. It will help everybody become better at what they do, and more supporting of people who need support. So it's just why this campaign is so important. And I if I'm honest, I was kind of thinking that it might be a campaign that that the LMA would say was a bit too difficult to take on. They've enthusiastically taken it on because I think they recognise all of the benefit and the value that the game can bring to this subject that we've all, if we're honest, avoided for far too long.
I think as well, Ross, the not just football actually, but sport and indeed many other professions and jobs recognise that if you're going to perform at your peak, you need to be physically and mentally fit. Really important. That's a really important message. I think many campaigns that are out there are doing really good work. You see very little or no direct mention of suicide, and I think that this partnership is what's really important about this partnership. It's going to address that, and it's crucial to break the stigma and give people the opportunity to open up about suicidal thoughts.
Thanks very much, Richard. I'm going to go to a question from John Cross at the Daily Mirror, and Andy, I'll put this one to you first. How important can football be in getting this message, drive the campaign to connect with young people?
I think it's the most effective vehicle that we have, John, to get messages over and to drive change in society. I referenced racism in football before, and the way in which the game, in many ways ahead of the rest of society, decided to take such a right and clear stance in terms of the Kick Racism Out of Football campaign all those years ago. I remember being at Everton, and I remember witnessing the racist abuse that Alex Williams received as Manchester City goalkeeper. I remember it kind of shocking me to my core. And that was in the early 80s, but not long after that, football recognised it. It started to speak out directly about it, and that message was absolutely carried through to my generation, that the game would not in any way tolerate any form of hate, discrimination, or racism. And football led a change in society. I've no doubt about it. And we've seen in more recent times football and other sports leading the conversation around mental health, which is an important change that we needed to see. Obviously, to pick up what you're saying, John, football has a particular way of communicating to younger men, and that's its power, certainly in this context when we know that suicide is the biggest killer of younger men. And I think this is what's happening today. We have as a society got better at talking about mental health, but we haven't yet broken this taboo about suicide. And once again, I think the game should feel proud of itself, that it is one step ahead of society at times in the subjects it's prepared to take on. And football always, in my view, speaks with great humanity and compassion, recognising that we all at some point in our life could experience suicidal thoughts. 1 in 5 of us will experience suicidal thoughts. So it's absolutely space for football to get in and lead once again, as it has done in the past. And that's why I'm so grateful, as I said, to the LMA, but also the managers who've been prepared to come forward and back this campaign. Because by doing it, their voice will connect with people who might not otherwise have been able to hear them addressing these issues, and it will change lives. The fact that these managers are involved, it will change lives, it will save lives, and that is football once again providing a great service to wider society.
Thanks, Andy. Mark, did you want to come in on that one at all?
Yeah, just thinking that the reach of football is so vast that we can touch so many people with the messages that we're putting out. This clearly is a really important message that we're trying to emphasise today, and that reach of football is worldwide, and obviously we were starting in the Greater Manchester area, but clearly there's a need further afield as well. I'm sure we'll try and push it out nationwide very, very quickly, and rightly so. I just think football sometimes gets bad press in terms of the influence we have by our actions on the field of play and how we behave. But I think for the most part, football does a huge job and a great job in raising the level of understanding of difficult subjects that maybe people have difficulty dealing with and discussing.
Thanks, Mark. Richard, did you have any comments?
No, I just think that the managers through the LMA have been really impressive in terms of their focus on driving the LMA. It's their association, and they want it to be a purpose-led organisation. We've seen how powerful the badge that the guys wear, men and women, wear, for example, on the prostate cancer, the work on Special Olympics, the work with the Alzheimer's Society. And I think the ability of really pushing home the message about physical and mental health, this is another really, really important subject that we're really delighted to be able to try and make an impact with. And certainly when the team wrote to all of the managers from the Greater Manchester area, the likes of Pep and Ollie and Casey Stoney and Gareth Taylor, not forgetting from the women's game, very, very important. And even past managers, Roberto Mancini, Louis van Gaal, Sven as well, Steve Coppell, Paul Ince, Manuel Pellegrino, all of these guys have offered their support to help with the campaign. And we've been really motivated by their commitment and their enthusiasm to make a difference.
Thanks very much, Richard. I've got a couple of questions for Mark. The first one's from Alistair McGowan at BBC Sport. As a manager, has your approach to dealing with players' mental health problems changed? Have you had instances where you've spoken to players about this and wish you'd handled it differently?
I think from my own experience as a player, certainly it's changed. I think there was an attitude maybe within football that if you showed weakness, you were told just get on with it and pull yourself together and show more strength and be stronger mentally. Clearly now in this day and age we know that it's very difficult to maintain your mental health at a constant level. It ebbs and flows, and sometimes you need help. And I think there's more knowledge certainly within the game in terms of mental health. There's less knowledge in terms of how to recognise the signs of people feeling suicidal, and I think that's the whole point of this campaign, is that we try and recognise those signs and get that training that maybe certainly managers and people in and around football players within clubs may be lacking, and it's an ongoing process that needs to happen and needs to happen quickly. I think certainly there's more awareness and there's more skill in recognising when people are struggling, but it's about knowing the right words to use and having that toolkit to understand how you can help somebody if they are struggling with suicidal thoughts, and hopefully we can improve that by raising the awareness of it.
Thanks very much, Mark. Another question on a similar topic from Tom Parmenter at Sky News. How hard would it have been earlier in your career for young footballers to put up their hand and say that they're struggling, and how different is the landscape now? Which episodes in your career underline this improvement within the game and society?
Well, just as I touched on, it's a different era now. I think it's easier, I would think, or I'd like to think, that people can be confident enough to talk about their mental health. Not everybody's going to be able to do it, to have that ability to reach out and ask for the help that they need. So that's the reason why everybody else needs to have an understanding of the signs and recognise when we can help people who are struggling with that. For me as a young player, I came from a small town, a small village in Wales, North Wales, and I know for a fact it would have been very difficult for me to put my hand up and ask for the help that I possibly needed at that time. I'm sure there was occasions where I was anxious about my future, where my career was going to lead when I was struggling, not playing well. So Never got to the point where I felt in danger, but certainly there'll be people out there and young players who've come through the ranks as a football player. They will recognise when maybe they were struggling and really needed help. That wasn't really there, certainly not in the time when I was a young player. So it's definitely improved. There's more welfare around the well-being of younger players, but we can always add to that and always add expertise to that.
Thanks very much, Mark. I'm going to go to a question from Tom Dambach at Hits Radio for Richard in the first instance. Do you believe football is an advantage of being able to reach younger men because of the community each club has? And do you worry about some people struggling on their own during the pandemic while fans are away from the stadiums? Richard, if you want to take that first, and then I'll go to Andy on the second part of the question.
Sure, I think the pandemic has rampaged through our communities, hasn't it? But I think the football clubs have stood up fantastically well to supporting their local communities. A couple of days ago on Sky, Port Vale owner talking about 300,000 meals that have been distributed out to all of the fans. There's been some amazing work by all of the clubs. And I think the best form of communication is repetition. I was told that once by a very famous England opening batsman, Dennis Amos, but it's something I've never forgotten. And I think what we need to be doing throughout the game with all the stakeholders, making sure that everyone's aware that football has the ability to bring us through difficult times, but making sure we make it make everyone aware of where to go and who to talk to when they need some help and advice and support.
Thanks, Richard. Question for Andy from Tom again. You mentioned some web stats at the start, but perhaps more anecdotally, have you already seen a shift in attitudes towards mental health after launching this campaign?
Yeah, yes, I would definitely say so, Tom. I think society is changing in the way that it thinks and talks about mental health and the way that it prioritises it. I was in Parliament in the House of Commons the day that an MP first admitted to having had mental health problems, and that was only about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was a massive change. It was a big thing that somebody, as Mark was saying, in politics like football, people don't like or haven't been sort of kind of felt able to admit to what might be seen by some as weakness. But the truth of the matter is we all have periods of good mental health or not so good mental health. And the fact that in Parliament people felt able to talk about it for the first time, I think it did empower a lot of people, and the debate's been changing ever since. And I think that the amount of visitors to our website tells you something. I've attended a vigil in Greater Manchester for families who've lost somebody to suicide, and it is one of the most affecting and powerful things you could possibly go to. And it's really important to speak the names of those we've lost. And there is very much a group underneath this campaign which does seek to remember everybody as an individual and support their families. So yeah, I think things have been changing in a very positive way around mental health, but I think this is in some ways the last taboo, because I don't think as a society we have yet found a way of talking directly, openly about suicide, and that's why I'm quite proud of what we're launching today. It is taking the understanding of the campaign around mental health to a new level, and that's a really important step, and that's something that I think we couldn't have imagined happening just a few years ago.
Thanks, Andy. Another question for you from Adam Clark at Roch Valley Radio. As Mayor of Greater Manchester, would it be an ultimate aim to get as many residents in the city region taking part in this 20-minute training session as possible?
Absolutely, Adam. It's brilliant that Mark's done it, and that alone I think might have an impact. This is the whole point of the partnership with the League Managers Association. When I say something and ask somebody to do something, or indeed when any politician does that, Do people hear it? Do they listen? Do they act on it? Maybe, hopefully sometimes, but not always. But when somebody like Mark speaks, people listen, and that is the power of this campaign. So I think it will help us all become better at obviously supporting our loved ones, if nothing else. You know, we will be in a position to support our own friends, family, work colleagues, neighbours better than we were before. 20 minutes, that's all it is. And what that 20 minutes will empower you with, as I say, will undoubtedly be the knowledge and the confidence to save a life. So really everybody should be doing it. And I would ask through you, in terms of the residents of Rochdale, but obviously through all of the media colleagues here, the message today is, could everybody please take the 20-minute training? Because in doing so, there is a skill and a knowledge and a confidence you will learn for life that will save many lives.
Thanks, Andy. And one other I'm going to put to you, it's from Rachel Pugh. Obviously, there's a partnership with the LMA, well, and the clubs themselves, but her question is, are the clubs going to practical activities for young men linked in with the clubs, as some of the Scottish football clubs have had links in with men's health? So, Andy, I'll put that one to you first and then to Richard.
Yeah, maybe Richard will have something to say about this. Rachel, I'm aware of the Scottish campaign that the clubs launched in partnership with the SFA. It's brilliant, actually, in that it brings obviously men together who have already a common bond because they support the same club, and it creates it's obviously then a kind of a leveler, if you like, and people then feel able to talk with each other in a way that they wouldn't do in a different setting. So I think the example of the I think it's Scottish Fans Fit for the Future, I think it was called. You know, it's a brilliant campaign, and I obviously we'll see where the LMA want to take it, but we would obviously support them if that was the direction in which they wanted to go. I think, you know, creating support groups or dialogue groups linked to particular clubs, well, I think would be a brilliant way to take this. But obviously, we'll build this partnership as we go along. But Richard, shall I hand over to you?
Yes, I've been working for the LMA for 14 years, and I've often felt that it's like working in a PLC without a head office at times. And what I mean by that is, I think there's not enough communication between the family of stakeholders on really key issues. And I think that this is going to help, and the managers will certainly help in being the glue in linking up the clubs and the leagues and the PFA and all the other bodies to hopefully address and really make a difference with this campaign as well as we roll it out. And I'm sure that we'll have opportunities to organise training sessions as well at non-professional clubs. Visiting schools and colleges and speaking with amateur teams as well. One of the great things we've got is this internet and the digital world that we're now able to communicate. So I absolutely believe this is a beginning of something that's really going to make a difference and bring us all together.
Thanks, Richard. Rowan Bridge, Radio 5 Live asks, it's a question for Mark. You're a friend of Gary Speed, who sadly killed himself. Could you talk a bit about how that brought home the issue of suicide to you and how much that led you to back the campaign? I'm just going to go to Richard on that one first, and then I'll bring Mark in.
Yeah, thanks. So with regards to Gary Speed, it's really important to recognise that the Cheshire coroner, and I read the family statement out following the coroner's hearing on behalf of the family, but Nicholas Reinberg, the coroner, stated that the evidence does not sufficiently determine whether this was intentional or accidental. Therefore, it wouldn't be appropriate to make comments regarding Gary. But I think one thing that we absolutely have taken as well is, and it was very interesting to read on the website about the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, supporting anyone bereaved or affected by death. No one needs to feel alone. to deal with their grief. And I think that's similar to what we say to first-time managers, actually, is don't do it on your own. So I think that's a really important message. But I needed to make that point regarding Gary.
Thanks, Richard. Mark, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I've obviously had teammates that have struggled with mental health, teammates that have lost their life to suicide as well, and it's very difficult. But I think this campaign is really important in terms of what we're trying to do, and certainly we have an opportunity, given the role that we're given within clubs, to help that process. Sometimes it's difficult to know what to say at the right time, and sometimes you're not in a position to affect the feelings of somebody who's struggling. But we just need more knowledge. We need a greater empathy and more understanding of how we cast a shadow sometimes as managers when we make decisions, and I think that's really important. We can all improve our emotional intelligence, I feel, and if we do that, then we're going to be better served recognising when people are struggling.
Thanks very much, Mark. Andy, do you have anything you want to say, or are you happy for us to move on? I'm going to go to Jamie Gardner at the Press Association. It's a question for Richard in the first instance. Martin Ling is one of the few managers to speak out about mental health issues. What things can be detrimental to a manager's mental health? Have things got worse in the hire and fire culture? And what support can the LMA offer managers who are dismissed?
Martin Ling has spoken really well regarding his situation, and we've been on a steep learning curve over recent years. But it's coming back to that point I made in the last point, actually, about don't do it on your own. But really, it's making sure that the manager and the coach has the right toolkit around, access the right toolkit to survive and to thrive in the game. So we focus on providing mentors. We look at the personal development, the career development of the individuals. We provide one-to-one support. And that's been the very one of the great lessons that Martin has helped us learn. And certainly at the LMA, we have over 50 professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, business people who support the managers and coaches so they don't feel on their own, that they can bounce ideas off. And we hope to continue to invest in the LMA Institute so we can reach a wider audience within the football community.
Thanks very much, Richard. Mark, did you have anything you want to add to that question?
Well, I think it's really important that you get the help when you feel you need it. As a manager, sometimes you're forever trying to make the right decisions and allow people to prosper, and sometimes there's no one there to help you, and that can be a real issue. And I think it's important that you're able to open up. It's not easy for everybody. People internalize things, and certainly men are guilty of that, possibly more than anybody, that we keep things to ourselves. We don't want to talk about times or issues that we're struggling with, and that can be detrimental to your health. So we just got to encourage men especially, but everybody in reality to be more open and reach out for the help, and allow people to recognise when people are reaching out. And if we can do that, then we can save people's mental health and hopefully their lives as well.
In the pandemic as well, Ross, we've had probably a webinar with some of the world's best coaches every other week. Over 3,000 people have accessed it, and indeed in a couple of weeks' time we're speaking with the National Hockey Coach Association over in Canada, and we were talking. I was talking to their chief executive about the mental toughness that a manager, a leader, has to push through difficult times. And can you teach those skills? Can you learn and develop those skills? Absolutely, you can. And I think that's one of the big investments over the next couple of years will be access to those live learning situations and improving your ability to cope with difficult times and survive through what we all know is a very volatile, fragile at times and lonely at times as well industry of being a football manager, indeed a manager of any of our national sports.
Thanks very much, Richard. Andy, did you have any thoughts on that question? I'm going to put a question to you, Andy, from Katie at That's TV. Do you think, and this is currently the final question, so if colleagues in the media do have any other questions they want to get in, if they could do that now, we'll finish after this one. Andy, Katie at That's TV says, do you think as a society we're successfully moving away from the stigma surrounding suicide? How can this launch specifically help to tackle the issue of reaching certain groups in society?
So, Katie, the honest answer to your question is not yet. And I go back to my own reaction when this campaign was first put to me. I did sort of flinch a bit and back away from it and thought it was too direct. And I had to be sort of taken through why it was so important to address it in such a direct way. And that was only a couple of years ago. And you would think somebody like me should, been really ready to jump on something like this, but I wasn't. And I can see now that my own sort of reticence is probably shared by other people. I think what we have done in the last decade is challenge the stigma about mental health. I think we're becoming much more comfortable as a society in acknowledging issues around mental health, talking about issues about mental health. So we've made a lot of progress, if you like, on the broader issue, but where we need to go further is directly addressing this topic. And I was really struck by something Mark said before. If we take this training, it's actually about, it is going to help other people, but it's going to help ourselves. We'll become better people, more emotionally literate, more emotionally aware, a better colleague probably, because we'll be better listeners than perhaps we were before. So I just think this has got to be something that is good for individuals and good for wider society. And in terms of it reaching specific groups, I think it's true, as I was saying before, not just younger men, but men of all ages. That they will choose who they listen to and who they don't. But I think our football managers are an incredible resource actually for this country. We have some of the best managers in the world. We've got some incredible characters who are brilliant communicators, who understand people. They are in many ways absolutely perfectly placed to lead a campaign of this kind, and the fact that they've been prepared to do it says a lot about them as people as well. And I think when they speak, as I said before, people do listen, and there will be people today who will listen to Mark and they will think differently about this issue. There'll be people perhaps who are struggling today who will have listened to Mark and will think, well, at least I'm not alone. Actually, there's somebody like Mark Hughes is acknowledging how difficult things can be at times. There are people who maybe feel alone and feel a bit trapped by the whole issue. All of a sudden see this launch and see people addressing the issue, and they maybe just feel a bit better than they did before. And that's the power of what's been done today in this partnership coming together. So I think people will hear messages who perhaps wouldn't ordinarily tune in to health officials or politicians, and that is why the LMA's involvement is priceless, really, for anybody involved in public health messaging, because you've got hundreds of current and former managers who are people that, in certain communities, if they have an affiliation with the community, with the club that people support, they will just have a ready audience that will listen to what they've got to say, and that's why we can't thank Mark, his colleagues who are taking part, but also Richard and the LMA enough for what they've done in stepping forward to support us.
Thanks, Andy. And Mark, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I think it's really encouraging. I think that we're at a place in time where we're more ready address these situations and these issues, and it's never going to be a comfortable process, I don't think, discussing suicide, but I think it's vitally important that we do. And the more training and understanding that everybody has, then we're going to recognise more situations and allow ourselves to intervene possibly when somebody is struggling, and at the point where they feel maybe suicide is the only option that they have. If we can get to that point early enough where we can persuade them and encourage them to speak, then we may stop a tragedy. So that's got to be everybody's aim.
Thanks, Mark. And Richard, would you like to come in on that final question?
Yes, I think we just need to all be prepared to continue to learn and evolve. It wasn't that long ago when we lost Dermot Drummey, the manager at Crawley, who died by suicide. He was a highly respected manager and a coach. He was actually studying on the LMA Diploma of Football Management at the time, a wonderfully down-to-earth and caring man. And there was much learning after he died by suicide to what we should be doing internally. And actually it led to 2 in-house sports psychiatrists that are now in place in the LMA, and Dr. Alan Johnson, who's leading, and indeed our health panel, is really making a difference in terms of how we communicate. So I think that's really good. I would like to say a few thank yous. Is that the right time now, Ross? Or yes?
That would be great.
So I think from our perspective, we were talking yesterday in a meeting about it's so crucial to communicate and help break down the barriers to talk openly about suicide, suicidal thoughts and suicide bereavement. And from all of the members of the LMA, a really special thanks to Mayor Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership, to Mark Hughes as well for joining us today, and indeed all of the managers supporting this special campaign, and to all the people doing amazing work in this area. We congratulate you all, and we look forward to working with you and extending these extremely important awareness actions nationwide.
Thanks, and I'll bring in Andy for any final remarks from him.
Well, just again, thank you, Richard, and all of your team. I want to recognise, Ross, in concluding what I want to say today, that there are organisations out there that have been working in this space for a long, long time. So obviously, I'm thinking of the Samaritans, and you know, we respect the people who volunteer for the Samaritans, who are there for people. And actually, that's an important message today. There's always somebody to talk to, isn't there? There's always somebody you can reach. So we've got the Samaritans number on the screen. I don't know if we could just go to the screen so colleagues in the media can see it. Thank you. Obviously, people can call the Samaritans on 116 123. We've been promoting a new text-based mental health support service throughout the pandemic called Shout. So that's available in all 10 of our boroughs, and people just need to text 85258, and they will have somebody to talk to. Lastly, there is also the Greater Manchester Bereavement Service, 0161 983 0902. So support is out there, and you know, people must never think that they're on their own. There's nobody for them. There is always somebody there to provide support. So I'll leave it there, Ross. I think what I'll do is give the final word to Mark, I think, and just say again that you know you're held with deep affection, Mark, on all sides in Greater Manchester, and I think your being part of this will have a big impact in our city region. So I'm sure I speak for everybody in thanking you for being with us today. But I'll hand over to you.
Well, thanks, Andy. It's as I said at the outset, it's an honour to be part of it. It's vitally important we raise awareness, and if we can do that, given the scope of maybe our influence, because of the roles that we have and the love that football engenders in people, then hopefully we can use that to be the right way to approach this big problem. And the support of football and the people who are in it will always be there for people. We've just got to see, educate ourselves, make sure that we're ready to help when we can.
Thank you very much.